Good afternoon, everyone. We apologize for the slight delay. My name is Charmaine Anderson. I am the Director of Advocacy for Allergy and Asthma Network. I do want to let you know this webinar is being recorded. We hope to commence and be finished in the next 45 minutes to an hour. And hopefully we'll have time for questions at the end. I just want to thank you today for joining our webinar to prepare for our annual Allergy and Asthma Day Capitol Hill event, otherwise known as AADCH, happening next Wednesday, May 4th. Today's webinar is being recorded, as I mentioned, and we will share this with you all who are participating with us in person. It'll be sent to you by email later today. I want to say a special thank you goes out to the American College of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology for their continued support, as well as our other sponsors. While we do have a smaller group joining us in person this year, our voice will still be mighty on May 4th, as we have over 200 virtual participants helping to bring awareness to the issues that will improve the lives of those impacted by allergies, asthma, and related conditions. During this webinar, you will also hear from Kelly Barta, who is the network's State Advocacy Project Manager, and Kevin Schultz, Vice President with Soapbox Consulting, whose team has prepared your meeting schedules and will discuss the logistics for our Hill Day. The network's mission and core belief is together we can work to end the needless death and suffering due to asthma, allergies, and related conditions through outreach, education, advocacy, and research. This is why we exist. This is why we continue to do what we do. We support lives, we save lives, and we too are seeking a world free from these chronic conditions. And your involvement in advocacy is critical to our mission to raise awareness and educate policymakers about the importance of smart and effective policies and programs that lead to better health outcomes for the millions of Americans living with these conditions. The network's policy priorities are used as a guide to engage in advocacy at the state and federal levels of government, access to care and affordable medications and treatments with an emphasis on health equity, federal funding for asthma and allergy programs, reducing health risk for allergy and asthma emergencies, mitigating environmental health hazards, and COVID-19 prevention and treatment, with special emphasis on underserved communities and those suffering from long COVID symptoms. This is further displayed during AADCH as we advocate for these policies and legislation pending in Congress. Now I want to do a brief review of our policy issues and key points for your meetings. Please note our federal policy priorities and list of pending bills in Congress that align with our priorities have been provided to members and staff that you'll be meeting with. Hard copies will be made available on Wednesday morning at the breakfast that you can take with you to any of your in-person meetings. Improving access to medical care and treatment. I recently read that improving access to quality care is one of the best ways we have to improve health, and without a doubt, prescription drug costs and out-of-pocket costs need to be lowered. It's reported that 1 in 5 patients with chronic conditions can't afford their medications, resulting in them not taking meds or prescribed or skipping doses, or even buying drugs from other countries to save money. Further, living with chronic conditions also means it's important to have access to high quality care and insurance coverage, especially for those who rely on Medicare and Medicaid. And we also want to see advancements in research and development of new therapies and technologies, which must be accessible to all, not just some. And more diversity is needed in clinical trials to provide insight into how a treatment may work or how safe it may be to varied population groups. Our next policy priority is just to continue federal funding for asthma and allergy programs. These programs support research and education and outreach initiatives. They include CDC's National Asthma Control Program and Climate and Health Program, NIH's National Asthma Education and Prevention Program, Healthcare Workforce, Food Allergy Research, EPA's Air and Water Quality Initiatives, and the Healthy Homes Initiative out of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which addresses a variety of environmental health and safety concerns in the home. We also seek to reduce health risk for allergy and asthma emergencies. As many of us know, asthma and allergy emergencies happen every day. We want to help reduce those emergencies in our homes, in our communities, including our local educational systems, restaurants, and other public venues. Greater attention is also needed to our country's food labeling system, so labels have a standard, easy to read format that protects those who live with severe food allergies. In our schools, as medical needs increase, our students need regular access to a school nurse. They are our frontline healthcare workers in our schools, and studies show that students in schools with a nurse perform better academically. Mitigating environmental health hazards, the network recommends that, basically individuals who suffer from asthma and other respiratory illnesses are vulnerable to environmental contaminants from pollution. That includes both indoor and outdoor air and the adverse effects of climate change. Greater investments are needed in climate and health preparedness and mitigation strategies, with particular emphasis in protecting children, seniors, low-income communities, communities of color, and people with chronic disease. And our last policy priority focuses on COVID-19. As you know, this pandemic has made a substantial mark on our country, as we all know, and has highlighted the racial and economic disparities within our society. Continued federal investment in our healthcare system's ability to meet the needs of all Americans is important, because COVID-19 is still among us and people are still suffering and dying. A greater understanding of the impact of the disease on our more vulnerable populations is necessary to determine solutions that will bring about better health outcomes, and further research and coordination is needed to support those who are suffering from long COVID. I wanted to give you just a snapshot of what you've seen in your toolkit, or basically your talking points, I apologize, which lays out really how these policy papers are provided for you in your talking points, which show background on the issue, the network's position, and related legislation that's pending in Congress that we support. And we did this so thereby when you are discussing these issues with your members, you can, again, provide a snapshot of what the background is on the issue, where the network sees there are ways to enhance issues to make them better in support of those patients that are living with asthma and allergies, and the bills that correlate that we are tracking at the federal level that support our patient population. So just look for that. We try to put it in a very compact way where each issue area is on one page or maybe two. But again, this kind of gives you a kind of a guide to help you through your individual meetings. Next, I'm going to turn to Kelly, who will provide a brief introduction of our state advocacy program and grassroots efforts.
Thank you, Charmaine. It's so great to be here, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of you next week. We wanted to highlight some of the activity that we're working on the state level, which we hope that you will get involved in after AADCH. Not all legislation on the federal level will affect certain issues, and so there are some things that must be addressed in the states. So many of our issues here mirror what Charmaine has already talked about, and I'll briefly just cover some of these. So improving access to medical care and treatment through making sure that patients can access the medicines that their doctors have prescribed. Sometimes this is difficult through insurance practices, and so we deal with issues around step therapy, prior authorization, surprise billing, non-medical switching. Also then we focus on reducing the health risk for allergy and asthma emergencies, making sure that states stock epinephrine, that there are food allergy guidelines, latex allergy, school-based asthma management. And then in mitigating environmental health hazards, we deal with air quality and water management. So there are several ways that you can get involved in the state level. And if you visit our website in the advocacy section, we go into this in more detail, and there's really easy ways that you can get involved if you don't have the time to meet in person or write a letter. But there are all of these different ways that you see on the screen that you can engage with your legislators. Right now, we're actively working in 35 different states on over 80 bills. 15 of those have been signed into law already, and the sessions are still ongoing. So we're looking forward to many more bills being passed this session. So please take a moment to check out the website you see here on the screen, and take action in your state if you have a piece of legislation that's current. I'll send it back to you, Charmaine.
Thank you, Kelly. This next slide just gives greater outline of tips for your meetings, which are also included in the toolkit that was emailed to you. In addition to the background information provided, there's two key points I want you to remember when you're meeting with your member. The first being, share your story. No one knows kind of how issues impact you and or your family member better than yourself. So please share your story to your members. Secondly, share why these issues matter to you. Oftentimes members, they don't necessarily connect the dots. And so to kind of give a greater explanation as to, why is it that we want school nurses available to our children? Why is it do we need better and greater, more standardized food labeling systems? So again, bring those personal anecdotes into any conversation you have with the members, because you are their constituent, and who better than to give that messaging than you? Also, we just ask that, again, for in-person meetings, we are still living in a COVID environment. And while we're relaxed somewhat on wearing masks, we do ask that you wear your mask, or it's required, not necessarily required for you to wear your mask, but we do ask that you wear when you can. It is not mandated while you're in the general public. However, member offices may require you to wear a mask. So please have one with you at all times, in the likelihood that a member asks you to wear one. Just some other key points to make in regards to your meetings with members. Meetings will run approximately 15 minutes. I ask that you please briefly introduce yourself, highlight if you are in the member's district. For the most part, all of you are, except for those who may be joining you from other states and or accompanying you who don't necessarily live in the member's district. Highlight those 5 key policy areas and provide background based upon the bullet points that were provided in your talking points, and the network's position. Again, ask that you connect personally on the issues by sharing your own story if possible. Please stay focused. Because of the limited amount of time, we want to make sure that you capture as much of the information as possible, to bring awareness to the issues to the member and or staff. If you don't know the answer, like we always tell you, it's okay to say you don't know, but please offer that you will get the answer and make a note of that by following up with the network staff, so we can then follow up with them after AADCH, or certainly we will give you the tools to also make that connection back with your member to provide the answer. Summarize any commitments that are made by the member. We're certainly going in asking for them to support and or co-sponsor various pieces of legislation. So please make note of that, and certainly make a note, again, if they're supportive and or not. We'd also love to understand why, if they are not supportive of a particular piece of legislation. At the end of your meeting, please remember to say thank you. Because we're working in a both in-person and virtual environment, certainly if you're in person, it's not unordinary to ask the member if you can take a picture with them. Certainly if you're doing a virtual meeting, if you're able to screenshot your screen to take a picture, so thereby you can use those photos to post in social media, and certainly share with us at the network so we can have a record of all the great experiences everyone has had throughout the course of the day. To dive into the agenda, and this is kind of a very high level view of the agenda without adding all the speakers, But again, due to security and COVID protocols, you must be escorted by Hill staff while inside any Capitol Hill building. So Kevin from Soapbox will kind of give some more details on how logistically that will work for those who have in-person meetings on Capitol Hill. For the lunch event on Wednesday at noon, we are planning for everyone, hence my asterisk here. We are planning for everyone to meet at the south entrance to Rayburn, which again, Kevin will give greater details as to just the map of the Capitol or the Hill, so you know exactly where you need to be. Because at that point, we're going to have a staff member from the Hill meet us at that entrance and escort us to the lunch event. Soapbox is working to modify schedules, because I know initially there were meetings that were conflicting with the time for the lunch briefing. So Soapbox is working to modify schedules. So if not all, most can attend this lunch briefing. But please understand, we are at the whims of a member's availability and or their staff. So some things may not necessarily work out, but the event will be live streamed. So hopefully you can capture some of the lunch event if you happen to miss it, but we're hoping everyone can be present. Additionally, I'd like to add that Karis Winders, who's part of the network staff, will be at that Rayburn entrance. And I assume we'll be wearing some form of network identification, so she can help be a point person for you at the entrance, so you'll know that you're in the right spot. I also want to share this other slide that speaks to the network staff in the blue columns here, or at the top of the blue columns. You'll see your various states underneath each network staff member. We kind of set it up so thereby these individuals can be your go-to. Certainly they're going to be reaching out to you in the course of the next couple days to introduce themselves, but certainly make sure that you're comfortable with the materials. And if there's any other questions you may have, they'll also meet with you on Tuesday at the welcome reception and meet with you again Wednesday morning at the breakfast, and be just your point of contact throughout the course of the day on next Wednesday. If those of you are coming and traveling alone and or participating in meetings alone, they too will be available to you to join you in any fashion with your meetings if you would like that. Some additional meeting logistics, as I mentioned, masks are requested, not required. However, some Hill offices require they be worn. You know, I can't stress enough to wear comfortable shoes. There is a lot of walking, and because you'll be going inside, outside throughout the course of the day, again, please be mindful of the type of shoe you're wearing. Because there are many virtual meetings happening, and again, we are at the liberty of the members, whether they are available to do in person or not. So we have to be prepared for everything. So we do have available at the hotel an area for you to do your virtual meetings. And I want to also note that if you happen to be on Capitol Hill and you are in an in-person meeting and you know your next meeting is virtual, you may ask that member's office if there is a place in their office that you may go to conduct your next meeting since it's virtual. Oftentimes they do have a spare conference room or a small area in their office where you can conduct that meeting. I will also stress again, if the meeting is closed, where you have a virtual meeting before your in-person meeting and the timing is very tight in order for you to get to the hotel and back to the Hill, because be mindful, every time you go into the Hill building, you need to go through security. And that too can take up some of your time. So we will, work with Soapbox to see if we can do a call ahead to the meeting that you have in person, in the likelihood that perhaps you can do your virtual meeting in their office prior to your in-person meeting for that office. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense. We'll go through it again later when we see you next week. The area in the hotel, I understand, is in, which we will identify also, it's Hub, HUB, rooms 2 and 3. All this will be identified during the course of your time in Washington. So you will you will not get lost as far as where you are in the hotel. The hotel is not that big, so it will be easy to find the various rooms where we will be located. Again, as I mentioned, Hill meetings do require a staff escort. So every time you have a meeting on the Hill, the staff member for that particular meeting will come and greet you and meet you at the security spot where they have identified to take you to the meeting. Once your meeting concludes, unless you have another meeting in that building, they will escort you back to security to exit out of the building. So it's a lot of back and forth. So I just want to, again, be very open and mindful, and just everybody kind of work with us as we're juggling in a very different environment. Again, as I mentioned with the Capitol Hill lunch briefing, we're all going to meet at 11:45 at the Rayburn South Capitol Street Southeast entrance. Again, we will reiterate this point next week. Each person will need to pass through security at this entrance. Ideally, we would like you to have already passed through security, and they will have an area where you can kind of wait for that staff escort. Again, Karis Winders will be available there to help direct us and point us in the right direction. This particular slide just reminds us that together, as we advocate at the state and federal levels of government, we have a strong collective voice to inform and influence public policy that supports all Americans living with asthma, allergies, and related conditions. And furthermore, while we engage with our federal elected leaders to make a difference at this event, remember to also connect with each other, as there is great value in networking, because you never know what more you can accomplish or how far your message can reach by getting to know the people around you. So I will take a few minutes and we'll answer some questions before we get into the second half of our webinar with the presentation by Soapbox Consulting. And I believe Kelly is going to help read anything that's in the chat. And if there's additional questions that need to be asked, please drop them in the chat and we'll hopefully can get to them before Kevin begins.
Charmaine, so far there aren't any questions in the chat.
Fantastic.
But if you'd like to, if you'd like to put something in there, now's the time.
And I just want to say, of course, today's not the end all be all, but again, as I said, your network staff that are leading or overseeing your state groups will be reaching out to you if there's any questions at any point in time up through the day. They will be available, and certainly you'll get to meet and greet with them on Tuesday evening at our welcome reception, which we hope everyone that is coming to town will be available to join us during that time as we get ready for the next day.
So there are a couple of questions now, Charmaine.
Sure.
One is asking, can they get the slides since they missed the meeting today?
Yes, and like I mentioned, every person that is an attendee will have these slides emailed to them, the presentation email.
Okay, and then another asks, am I meeting with all of my reps in Utah or just my reps? All reps in Utah, just my reps.
Correct. The way Soapbox schedules the meetings, it is for your particular delegation, meaning your one member and your senators. However, if there are more than one person coming from your state, we group those people together. So oftentimes you will join members in other congressional districts or other members of the House of Representatives. So that way, everyone from Utah would be going to all the Utah meetings. But would be specified as to who your particular member is.
So another question, I'm joining virtually, but haven't been informed of any meetings.
We can be in touch with you. Karis, if you could please contact Karis Winders at the network, and we can resolve that issue.
And then one more question, I may have missed it, but will breakfast orientation be available virtually?
We are not doing a virtual breakfast webinar or webcast. We are strictly leaving that for the lunchtime event. The breakfast will be more so a lot of the logistics and going over issues for the course of the day. So we are leaving the live stream event for the lunchtime briefing.
Okay. And I think that should do it. So I think there's the question from Stacy around, Stacy, I think you're asking, since you're attending virtually, you haven't received anything about meetings. And I believe only in-person participants will be meeting with legislators.
That is correct. Although I wasn't sure if, that's why I want you to contact Karis Winders to confirm if you had registered under our in-person attendees earlier this year, or was strictly virtual, which our virtual participants will be engaging with us through our online advocacy campaigns. We will be sending messaging to you throughout the course of the day to go on an online advocacy webpage and engaging through our online portal to communicate with legislators through letters, as well as providing social media posts if you utilize Twitter and or Facebook. We've provided some sample social media posts, which are all available on our website.
And that's it.
Great. Kevin, I don't know if you are online yet, but hopefully so we can get started.
I am on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I don't see where the part is that I can take myself on camera, but let's keep with the slides. Oh, you told me we weren't going to be on camera. I should have listened. Hello, everybody. I'm Kevin Schultz. I'm with Soapbox. And we had the pleasure and the honor to schedule your meetings on the Hill. And I'm going to tell you about how to see your printed schedule on the day of the event, how to see your mobile tool schedule, which I bet many of you have already done, how you're teamed, how do you give feedback after each meeting, and then how you can get live assistance during the event if you have any questions on that day. And I'm sure you'll have a number of them now that we've had this environment where we're sort of in an in-between place where we're not quite back open yet in terms of public entrances, but we're going to get you into these offices when you have an in-person meeting. Let's go to the next slide, please, Charmaine. I want to show you the numbers. So there's about 40 of you from 20 states, and you'll be conducting about 75 meetings through the course of the day. And most of you, you'll notice that you have your 2 senators and your House rep. And as Charmaine mentioned, you might have 1 or 2 other House members if your team was someone else from your state. Let's go to the next slide, please. First, I'm going to talk about how you will receive your printed schedule when we are together on the morning of the event. We'll be handing out printed schedules on paper so that you have a copy of your schedule that you can hold in your hand if you wish. You will be seated by state so that if there are other participants from your state, you will be together right from the start. There's a few things I want to show you about your printed schedule. Your name and your district are on the upper right corner. You'll also see your schedule code for the mobile tool, which I will go over in just a minute. And then below that is our help desk number. That is how you get live assistance at any time during the event. And so if you have any questions while you're on the Hill, you're going to call that number, including if you're in a virtual meeting and the staffer hasn't shown up yet, you can call our help desk. Below that, you see the meetings are in time order. If it says on your schedule that you are meeting with the member, it says with member, then you are on the member of Congress's schedule. If you see a staffer's name and title, that is the person you'll be meeting with in the office. And to the right of that, you'll see some details like the room number and things like that. And there are even more details than just what you see here, because now that we have instructions for escorts, there will be more details below that. At the bottom, there's a key for the titles of the staffers. There's a key for the abbreviations of the office buildings, which correspond to a newly updated map on the back of the schedule that I'll show you in just a minute. And then I also want to show you that you see here to the right, that's a table tent because you'll be seated by state. And then below that is what we put the individual schedules in. It's a bright yellow, bright white envelope that has your state. And then it also has a place for you to put your cell number so we can call you if we need to reach you during the event. So what you'll do is you will distribute the schedules from your state. And then if there's anyone who did not show up, you will put an unclaimed schedule back into that envelope. And then you will bring that envelope to us at the help desk as you're leaving to go to the Hill with any questions, comments, or needs that you may have from your state. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. On the back of each printed schedule is a map of Capitol Hill with the entrances that are in use right now, and they are circled in red. So this is what's new. If you've done this before, you know that there were usually like 3 or 4 entrances to each building. Right now, because the public entrances are not open, there is one main entrance, and they are circled here in red. So they will be on the back of your schedule. And that's where you would meet your escort, who will take you up to your meeting. Again, detailed instructions for where to arrive and when are going to be on your schedule and on your mobile tool schedule. Typically, the phone number of the office is also on those instructions, so that if you don't see your escort, you can call the office and say, hey, we're waiting down at the main entrance. Can you send the escort down to get us? A lot of times the offices rely on you to call them to send their escort down. So if you don't see someone, you'll call that number that's on your schedule. And if for some reason you have any troubles calling or you can't find your escort, you can always call our help desk. I'm going to give you that number again in just a minute. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. I'm going to take you through the Soapbox mobile tool. By now, you should have received an email from Soapbox that reveals your own individual schedule in real time. It is not an app. There is nothing to download. The mobile tool is simply a website. Let's go to the next slide, please. The first time you go onto the mobile tool, it will ask for a cell number. It does not mean that you have to use the mobile tool on your phone. In fact, for virtual meetings, we encourage you to use it on your laptop that you bring to town. Big screens are key for those virtual meetings. We ask for your cell number so we can text you reminders to your phone 1 hour before each meeting. In addition, if a change happens on the day of the event, you'll get a text with a push notification. So that's why we ask for your cell number. Next slide, please. Let's talk about some of the icons on the mobile tool on the right side or on the left side of this slide. And I think, Charmaine, if we move forward, you'll see that there is a phone number that pops up at the very end, and I want to have that up while I'm speaking. Thank you very much. Once you put your code in and enter your phone number, you'll land on this screen. There's a red button at the bottom. That is the button you will push to get the live help desk. There's also a button for documents. That is where you'll find copies of our issue briefs, which detail what we are asking Congress to do for us. You can print those documents, you can pinch, you can zoom, you can even email them to yourself or to a staffer who says they want more information. Soapbox will send copies of our issue briefs to each Hill office with our confirmations. But be aware that even though we will have sent them, you will hear some staffers say things like, I didn't get a chance to read those, or I haven't seen those. So you know you have the ability to forward from the document section if you choose. Again, you can always call our help desk and we will resend them. We will also be adding the email address of those staffers who you're meeting with to the schedule at the end of the advocacy day so that you can email that staffer a thank you note or anything you like as your follow-up. There's also a button for the bios of your member of Congress if you want to do a little more research on your member of Congress. There's a button for your team. If you have more than one person from your state, you'll see the other people you're paired with for your meetings. And then the schedule button is the one you'll use the most often. That's the one on the upper left. It has all of the links to your virtual meetings and those instructions for where to arrive for your in-person meetings. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. So when you click on your team, if there are other folks from your state, you will see their names there, and you will also see their email address, which might be important to you in case you want to reach out to them before you even get to DC. Next slide, please. All right, we go one more. I can show you what happens when you press the schedule button. There you go. When you click on your schedule, in addition to the meeting times and who you're meeting with, it will tell you the virtual Zoom link if you have a virtual meeting. So it will say either virtual if it's a virtual meeting, or it will say in person if your meeting is in person. So in each case, I want to tell you, we've asked for your meetings to be in person. So if the meeting is scheduled in person, you will see the detailed instructions of where to arrive for the meeting. Again, because those main entrances are not open to the public, the offices have given us instructions for where you should arrive just before your meeting time so that you can be escorted up to your meeting. Again, if you have any troubles, we have 11 people here ready to take your call if you have questions about where to show up or when. Now let's talk about if you have a virtual meeting. If for virtual meetings, there is a link that connects you to a virtual room on the Zoom platform. We use Zoom. You simply press on the link to join the room. There's no lobby, there's no waiting, there are no rosters to approve. Soapbox is opening all of the rooms for you. You can quickly get in by pressing the link. Under each link, there's a phone number and a PIN. You do not have to use that. It's a backup. In case you're having trouble with your camera or your microphone, you can call in. You know you'll be able to join that meeting if you have any technical problems. We've also tracked key committees on the schedule. So you will see key committees in brackets if your member of Congress is on a key committee. If you're a newbie to this, do not worry about that at this point, but just know that the key committees, those are the members of Congress who are maybe a little bit more important than some of the other members we're meeting with, because they will be taking up the legislation that we're interested in. So we like to put that on your schedule so you know if your member is on one of our key committees. And then at the bottom, you see the feedback button. That is the button that you will push to give feedback after each meeting. And we ask at least one person to fill out the feedback questions. If we go to the next slide, I'll show you what that looks like when you press that feedback button. So afterwards, you'll press that. You don't have to say who you are, which meeting you're talking about. The mobile tool already knows that because you put in your code, so it knows who you are. And you're clicking on the feedback button under the meeting so it knows which meeting you're talking about. You simply just need to answer the questions that are there. And then Charmaine and her team will have all of the answers to those questions at the end of the day. You can see that there's a very small camera icon at the very bottom of this. We like it when you guys take photos. So when you have your in-person meeting and you take a photo of the member of Congress with you or the member's staff, you can upload that to the feedback form so that Charmaine and Karis and Tanya get all those great pictures at the end of the day. Even if you have a virtual meeting, you can take a screenshot of your virtual meeting and upload that as the photo. Just remember to ask the member or the staffer before you take the picture. They always say yes, at least every time I've asked. So then you can take a picture and upload it. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. So there are some details that I think Charmaine wants you to have in terms of their email addresses for reaching out for more information. I'll just wrap up by saying when I see you all on the morning of the event, I will bring those printed schedules and I will be at the help desk and I will also be speaking to you. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, you know that on the mobile tool, you can press that help desk button and you can give us a call. All right, Charmaine, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Kevin, one quick question for you, just to make sure that our advocates, from a logistical standpoint, understanding that there are entrances that they need to meet the staffers at. Like we had commented about the lunch event, do you recommend, just again, to make sure things are timely, that the advocates get through security and wait at that point for the staff member?
For the lunch?
No, for their individual meetings.
Yeah, so for the individual meetings on each schedule, there will be instructions for when to show up and what number to call. So usually about 15 minutes before the meeting time, you'll show up to that entrance, that red entrance that's on the back of each schedule on the map for that building. And then the instructions, I'll give you an example of what the instructions say. They might say, please show up to the east side of the Cannon House office building to the entrance that faces Delaware Avenue. The escort will be waiting for you. If you do not see your escort, you will call the office at 202-225-2165 and let them know you're waiting. So that's typically the instructions you'll have for an in-person meeting. You can't go into the entrance like you used to and just walk up to the office. You need to be escorted to each of these meetings.
And Kevin, again, to clarify, so do not go through security until you see the staff
Correct.
member?
That is correct.
Okay, just want to make sure we clear that.
And Charmaine, one of the things you mentioned earlier that I will also piggyback on was, if you do have a virtual meeting after an in-person meeting, it does not hurt to ask your staffer, hey, can we stay here in your conference room for our virtual meeting that we have in a half an hour or in an hour? A lot of times they'll say yes. And that way it saves you from having to go back to the hotel for your virtual meeting. If they won't allow it, then you can go back to the hotel. But sometimes you'll be surprised. They have some extra space and they'll let you, since you're already in their office, they'll let you stay there for your virtual meeting.
Thank you, Kevin.
Sure.
Kelly, can you let me know if there's any additional questions in the chat we should address?
No more questions.
Well, great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. We are excited to host you next week in DC. Please don't hesitate to reach out to the network if you have any questions or need assistance. We are here to hopefully have this experience be as smooth as possible. Again, please bear with us all. We're all kind of walking into a very new environment as far as the, kind of challenges and different ways of life on Capitol Hill. So again, we are here to be advocates. We're here to enjoy ourselves and certainly here to make a difference. So again, thank you all for participating and we look forward to seeing you. Cheers.